Cool. So welcome to the, I think, 7th Piral Community Stand-Up. Today, a couple of demos as usual, and of course, a quick review on what happened since the last community stand-up. What we did was we released a new version called 0.12.2. This brings a few minor enhancements. Particularly, the documentation was updated. We added a new validator. Yeah, and I think also we pushed a nice addition to the Piral CLI, which allows specifying custom fields when publishing. We will see that also in a quick demo. I would say let's jump right in. By the way, before we do that, one more remark regarding the 1.0.0. We now put it on a nice state. Still don't know if we can accomplish that, but I now heard that Webpack 5 is officially scheduled for the 10th of October, so that's 10/10/2020. And they like that date. Hopefully they can make that truth. And so we thought it might be also a good date to have 11th of 11/2020. I think it's an even nicer date. 1 + 1 is 2. And so you get always the 2020. If you know love numbers, this date should also please you quite a lot. Anyway, so let's see if we can do that. Again, for us, we have two requirements. One is Webpack 5, and that we can actually use that. So that will involve a little bit of implementation work too, and of testing. What will not involve much testing is React 17. That's the other dependency that we have, but still, it's a dependency, so they need to release that. That being said, let's, I would say, jump right into demos. Let's not lose much time. First one is we updated the VS Code extension. So let's just close that folder, and yeah, let's look at extensions. We can now look for Piral, and there is version 0.1.1. So that's another iteration of our VS Code extension. The first serious one after the 0.0.1, which we just used as a placeholder. And this version already brings some functionality that we believe are a plus. So let's first maybe have a look how the experience is if we just open some repository. Let's try to find one. Actually, I have one on the disk. Let's pick that one. Second, let's pick the Piral instance that I have here. Right, so that's a standard Piral instance as it was scaffolded. And now I could, for instance, say, let's get some code gen file in here. I don't know. I mean, you could say, oh,
sorry for interrupting, but I think you're not sharing right now.
Oh, did that? No, actually, I'm sharing.
It's weird. Two guys were.
Yeah.
So I could try to reshare. Maybe that works now.
Yeah, that looks better.
So it never worked beforehand. You didn't see the screen. You never said anything.
For me, it was initially.
Okay. Okay, but then just say something, because otherwise now it's not in the recording, and it's of course a little bit bad to not see what was happening. But okay, so what I did here again was I just opened an application shell that was scaffolded, and now I added a new file called fuku.codegen. And yeah, I don't get any completion here. I don't get any syntax highlighting, so it's a pretty frustrating experience writing a codegen here, if you want to write a codegen. But codegen files are quite nice. I mean, not only for the app shell, or pilets, but in general. Yeah, but it's just not really working out well. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing is, of course, if I now want to run that, I need to go back to the command line, or I need to open a new terminal. I need to know all these commands, and that's, of course, not very nice. So that being said, let's bring the Piral VS Code extension to the table. Let's just install it. And a reload is required. I think I could just open this again here, and it should be in there out of the box. And I see here this logo now, Piral. And if I go there, then actually I should see some information on this workspace. I don't, which is not good. Is it really the latest one that was installed? Okay, maybe there's problems there with the WSL. I need to check that. So again, it's just the first placeholder. But what it would allow you is, of course, to see these commands here in the additional workspace info. And what we can do now is, if we don't have anything open, we just create a new Piral instance. And of course, that's broken here too. Yeah. So again, I think it has some problems with the WSL. We could try running the same thing just from Windows. Let's see how that works. That should actually work better. Let's see. Running this from Windows directly. So let's run the app shell. And we see all these commands popping up. We see the workspace info with the information here. And we could now go and either run one of these commands, or we could also leverage that we can now nicely and great thing, it runs on the Mac, but I guess here it really has some path problems. But anyway, create a new project. And again, minus the bugs we see right now, it's creating demos. Should have checked also the Windows machine. But this is what it will essentially allow you to do quite nicely. And I think, we already made one step forward now with this release. And in the next release will be certainly much better. And of course, we will fix these bugs. Great. So it's always good to have multiple machines to test that. Okay, maybe some question on that one, or otherwise I will proceed with hopefully something that works.
Not from my side at the moment.
Okay, so yeah, one more thing that I guess I could show, because I showed it before, is the CodeGen support. When I now add a CodeGen file, I automatically get it identified as a JavaScript file, so I get also full code completion on this one. And could define some things, and I don't know, something like that. And see that there's a number, etc. So that just works. And which is quite nice. So I don't need to swap the detected file type, and is the first step in bringing additional convenience to the table. All right, so then maybe that reload would have been good, but I don't think that these issues have anything to do with that. All right, so then next thing I want to show is validators, the validation of a pilot. So for those of you who don't know what this validation is, the Piral brings a concept called validators. And essentially how it works is that in your app shell, you can define the configuration of certain validators. If you want to know which validators exist, you can always go to the docs Piral.io page. And I guess in the tooling space, when you have something like validate pilot, you can see which validators exist there. For instance, there is the stays-small, a little bit of documentation, but also there are others like users latest Piral, etc. has no self reference, and so on. Right? So you can use this kind of validators. You could extend the set of available validators with your own validators in form of a Piral plugin, or just some code that you load, maybe that you maybe bring with your app shell. You can do all that. All these validators, they have default settings. If you want to override them, you just specify them in the list of validators. That being said, I now have set the stays-small validator to 0. 0 is here a special kind of number. 0 means don't validate at all, because I mean 0 doesn't make sense. Now, if we run, let's see, I think I place it in a script called validate. So if we just run validate, it takes a little bit. And this one, for instance, comes with a outdated version. It means of the sample Piral. But otherwise there's just this one warning. There's no warning about the size. Let's just maybe build it for once. Let's see what the size is of this Pilet. It's rather large. That is what I can already disclose here. And the reason is we are getting the full Material UI core in here, which is quite large. So once this is finished, we will see that it actually exceeds a certain limit. And the default limit that we set is 50 kilobytes. So it takes a little bit. Let it wait. Sorry, Teams draining my CPU. Okay, so it's large, 328. Again, we've seen already the validation didn't yield anything. So if we now would say nothing, for instance, then the default is being taken. So what I edited here is the package JSON of our app shell. That's the sample Piral app shell. It's just the reference I have here in the node modules. I just do that now for demonstration purposes. Usually you wouldn't edit that. I mean, that's already defined from your app shell. And the reason is that in a CI/CD pipeline, of course, you also cannot edit that thing, right? So it would always work against the real app shell. Okay, now we see the main bundle is too large. We get an action validation error. The maximum is 50 kilobytes, but it received a lot more. Great. If we say, oh, we don't want to have a warning, we could also, I think, go into a more lightweight mode. And here we got now a warning instead of an error. And the reason is I set it to a negative value. So here in this format, we interpret negative values as absolute size, but just a warning. I could also say, I accept up to, let's make it 500 kilobytes, and otherwise it would error. And let's see that. And again, no warning here, no error here. Let's set it maybe to 300. So we are slightly above, but we would still get a warning. And that is how that one validator works and how validators work in general. So for instance, this was the outdated version. If I want to improve that, this is the use latest. I could just set it to ignore, and essentially it would be gone. So like this, and let's run it. And now we see the message is also gone, right? And likewise, I could also require this thing. I think it's called required. Let's check again. It's required. And so now I should get an error. Yeah. Okay. Any question regarding validators? Besides validating a Pilet, you can also validate the app shell itself. There, of course, you don't specify it in your app shell because you are the app shell. There, you usually specify these settings in the Piral RC file. More details on that are on the documentation page. All right. Then Piral feed submit. Let's look at that. All right, so here I have a small pilot. There's actually not much in there, no, nothing. But it's sufficient that we can try something. We can try setting fields. And what fields are is quite easy to explain. What if you have a custom feed service implementation and you want to provide some new information when publishing a pilot? So then you, of course, have a couple of choices. One choice is that you put query strings on your URL, and that could work quite fine, right? You could even, of course, have in your path of your URL also special fields that you read out. All that is of course possible. But maybe you want to have a really clean API design and you want to transport something in the body, since we're anyway submitting a form body, a multi-part form. Maybe you want to transport some information there. Maybe it's even longer information, right? Full descriptions or whatever. So what options do you have? And of course, you could always fall back and just transport the tarball yourself. But yeah, the Piral CLI was meant as a tool to help you with these cases. And therefore, I think it should be able to be done by the Piral CLI. So now what we added is this special syntax here that transports an object, and you can set whatever you want to, right? So you could set foo bar here, and it would just work. So let me fire up a version of the sample feed service. And let's do that. And once it's running, let's just publish the pilot there. And actually, since the pilot tarball is already here, let me just remove that flag. It should work just a lot faster then. Let's see, it's running. And let's try publishing it. So we now published, and it received foo bar here. So again, we just had this field in there. And actually, you could add all kinds of fields. So I could even say fields dot, yeah, QXset. This is my field. And now we got two things in here, right? And you could extend it as you want to, right? So picking the example from beforehand, have a tag in there, and still now we got three things at least when I can type correctly. So it's fields, not field. And now this works here too, right? So now we got these three things, and that's quite handy. So your custom feed service could take these fields and do something useful with it. Right.
Quick question regarding the field tags. Of course, it's always down to the feed service or the custom feed service to interpret and deal with the field tags as such. But the idea is to have it on, let's say, individual pilot version scope, or is the idea to also have that field then set for all versions of that pilot?
I mean, that's depending, as you said, on the implementation. So usually you just say that now when I publish this particular pilot, I associate now these things with it. Now what the field service does with it is of course up to the feed service. So what I imagine you could do, for instance, here is that you override, for instance, a version. So that's something very nice. So you don't need to fiddle with the package JSON, but what you could do is you just say, oh, I have now my preview version. So your CI/CD could detect that you now transport the same code, right, from one stage to another. And for the one stage, it still uses maybe the same feeder or something, but it uses the version override, and therefore what was received by your feed service will be overridden. So you could override then things that are seen anyway by the feed service. That's one thing, right? The other thing is bringing up that example with the tag again. So this way, the pilot that you publish there in our feed service gets automatically usually the tag latest. But if you don't want it, you just publish it with the tag next. That was supported, by the way, right up to this point anyway, but we supported it only with a query parameter. So you had to change your URL. But now you can do it via fields too, and that's quite nice in my opinion, because it's just one URL now, and you change this now via the fields command line parameter, which, as you can see, is very easy to change also from the perspective of a CI/CD pipeline, and very clean in my opinion. Right, and so that would only apply in this case only to this one pilot that you publish, right? Only this one version, this one pilot that you put here, this code, it would say, oh, this by the way, this is now a next pilot.
Okay. No, it's very powerful, especially with the CI/CD pipeline. You can then start getting certain, let's say, fields for different stages of your pilot.
Exactly. So you could also say, I mean, let's say you have an environment feature in your feed service. So you could also say environment prod or something. And that way, I mean, you don't need the tags. Maybe you have something like the environment feature. It can also switch there, right? It could also, of course, do things already with only setting some rules already, right? So you could have something like a rule sets behind, and so without somebody now needing to dig in and say some PO maybe and saying, oh, this one pilot that was never published before, and so that's the first time I now need to put in the right rules. I don't know, for some beta users, or we only release it to users of a certain market. You could now pick maybe pre-made rule sets, and they would be applied, for instance, if no rule set has been yet determined for that pilot. So that's another powerful feature, because it just makes your system much more automated, right? But of course, it depends on your feed service and what that can do and what now these fields mean. I mean, for us, it's just a flexibility thing, because it is now a nice way of actually having some flexibility in your feed service implementation without having then to use some other system for deploying. You can just still use the Piral CLI, and that's also in our specification written. So we updated the spec, I think, here on the feed API. So we have now these fields mentioned here. Yeah.
Great.
Okay. So that's all we have to demo for today. Sorry about the video outage in the beginning. Are there any more questions? Maybe a remark. At the moment, we have on the cloud service, unfortunately, an issue when publishing pilots. That issue we will take care of in the next 30 minutes. Just came up, we are on it, and we will fix it as soon as possible. Okay, if there are no more questions, then we are on the fix. Thank you, guys, and have a great day.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.